All right, Andy, we're live, man.
How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to meet you. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And man, just want to kick this off and kind of make this as organic as possible. As Sebastian got you and me introduced after he and I had an incredible conversation less than 2 weeks ago. And as soon as we got off our podcast, you were like, I got a guy I got to get you connected with, Andy. And I was like, all right, man, let's do it.
Sebastian is an endless source of fascinating conversation. So we have a brunch with some of the authors in the Vancouver area, and because I live slightly outside of town, I have to drive in before traffic. So I'm in Vancouver by 6:30. I work for a while at a coffee shop, and then I go to his house and we hang out for like an hour before everybody shows up. And it's just like most of the time it's me listening because everything he's talking about is so interesting. He's talking about some new adventure he went on, or some new thing he discovered, or some new, rabbit hole he's gone down. So it's always a good time.
Yeah, I had no idea what to expect, and then next thing I know, we were like 50 minutes in, and we were like, we gotta go. But it was such a cool conversation, and I knew him recommending us connecting. I knew it'd be a great conversation, and it's a great way to do this as well. So man, good to meet you. Like I said, the Dark Blade Assassin series is what Sebastian was bringing up to me, and I haven't read your books. He pointed them out to me. I've got them bookmarked. And I was laughing because on your website, you've got like a to be read thing you created there. And I've got one too. And I'm like, man, I'm just stacking books. And I got to figure out how to find a way to just read all these.
It is a never ending problem. So you can't really see it, but this shelf down here, let me see. This shelf here is all full of books. These are all TBR. And then there's another shelf below it. So these are all like trad published, and then the shelf below that is all indie published. And then in the closet is, I don't know, maybe another 60 books. So I will never run out of things to read. And that's not even counting like ebooks, because not everyone, sends ARCs and paper. Some people are like, oh, I'll send an ebook. So I mean, we're never going to run out of stuff to read, which means we're never going to run out of stuff to talk about, because it's always fun to talk books.
Yeah. Well, you were talking right before I pushed record. You were saying you completed a chapter today. You've got some other responsibilities business-wise that you've got to be responsible for. Throw the podcast in the middle of it. Do you read on a daily basis as well?
I do. I guess years and years ago, maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago, I was running a lot at the gym, and I realized I hate sort of staring in the mirror. But I'm staring right ahead. So I'm like, well, if I'm just going to lower my gaze a bit, I can read. And I kind of trained myself to just read on my iPad. Granted, the font is about this big. So, there's maybe 10 lines of text in the whole screen, but I can read while I run. And then it got to the point where I can read like on a treadmill, and I can actually walk. If I know like hiking trails well, I can read on my iPad while I walk. So I do try to read a lot. I mean, the fact that I'm a content creator on Instagram, now doing this director of publicity job, if I'm talking about books, promoting books, it helps me to know what it is that I'm actually talking about. So, and I just love reading. Like there were years and years where, as an author, it's a very common problem where you just can't read. Like editor brain kicks on, and reader brain is kind of strangled to death by that, because you can't enjoy it. Because you're like, they should, wrong comma. They should have changed it. There's a, passive. And then there was a day it was 2022. And I had just got this sort of wall-to-wall bookshelf, and I stocked it with all books from my local used bookstore. And I ran into Peter Brett Demon Cycle. And I blinked, and it was 2 weeks later, and I'd read every single Demon Cycle book. Yeah. And from then, I have just been like, okay, I can read now, and I don't ever want to stop again. So I've just kind of driven through it. So I think last year I read 140 books. The year before was like 160. And audiobooks are definitely included in there, but just kind of carving out an hour to an hour and a half every day to do it makes it possible. I mean, it's always hard to find the time, but I managed.
Yeah. No, you saying that, it brings me back. I've had several conversations with authors who talk about they love to read, but their reading has gone down quite a bit since they became full-time authors and have responsibilities to put out so many books and novels and pieces of work throughout the year now, so just kinda piles on a little bit, and, they said the exact same thing you said, though, is like when they read someone else's, all of a sudden they're thinking of, "Well, this should have been this way and edited this
Mhm.
way," and they have a hard time just enjoying a book, just to turn their brain off a little bit. They said it almost is like more work reading another book.
It really is. It's that editor brain, and so once I don't even know what it was that did. I know that some books the editor brain doesn't even kick in. Like when I read
Yeah.
Jay Kristoff, right? His writing skill is so far ahead of my own that I'm like, fine, he gets a few sentences wrong here or there, but I'm just so in love with the story. It's when I find books that let's say are sort of on par with my level of writing, which I'm not going to say is, top tier. I'm a very, very sort of upper middle of the pack writer. I write some smart things, I write some entertaining things, but I'm not one of those guys who agonizes over every word, every sentence. So if I find somebody whose writing is fairly similar to mine, then it's sometimes easier to shut that brain off, and then
Yeah.
sometimes it engages even more. So
Yeah.
but like Brandon Sanderson, who am I to offer Brandon Sanderson advice on writing? Pierce Brown, these kind of guys. I'm like, let's just sit down, shut that part of my brain off, and have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually never asked this simple question before to anyone. What's your favorite part about being an author? Like, just like, what is the most exciting thing about writing? Because what you write, like, you write stories and you're creative and you create characters and worlds, but like just talk about the satisfaction of it. What like gets your juices flowing and just what makes you so passionate about it?
I mean, there is an endless number of things. That's sort of like asking where creativity and imagination comes from, and that everybody has a different thing. But I know for me, being able to just think in story and make up stories and actually be like, oh, that's an amazing story. It's almost so I love puzzles. I love complicated games. I love anything that takes brain power to fit all the pieces together. And that's what a story is in large part for me. So when I finish this story and I sit back and I'm like, damn, that was a hard puzzle, but I loved it. That's kind of what that's that sort of intellectual satisfaction for me, which
Yeah.
it makes it such a joy to write. But then there's the emotional satisfaction, and I think that is what has kept me writing beyond the intellectual. I've been writing almost for 15 years now, 13 years I think. I published my first published book was in 2015, so it's almost been 11 years published. But I've been writing for a while, and it's really the emotional satisfaction of kind of exploring a piece of myself that I don't think I'd be able to pull out otherwise. It's like unless you have like really, really good friends, which I never did because I traveled around and moved around a lot. But when you have good friends, you can kind of be vulnerable. You can share the pieces of yourself. You can talk about your struggles, your difficulties. But when you don't have, let's say, those people in your life, apart from your spouse and your parents and siblings and all of that, you don't really have the opportunity to be vulnerable or to show those sides of yourself, whereas writing gives you that. It's something that I kind of realized I was doing into the journey. Somebody had read one of the first Darkblade books, and they were like, oh, that's really cool that the main character, he's a badass assassin, but he takes on this sort of stepfather role. Was it related to your own life? I'm a stepfather of four children. And I was like, wait, did I do that accidentally? And then reading over it, I was like, oh, I definitely accidentally did it, but
Yeah.
also intentionally, because there's so many times where I'm just writing the struggles that I was feeling into the character's story, but I
Yeah.
didn't realize that I was sort of telling my own story through this mirror. But then realizing that, it made me more aware, and I leaned into it to where I continue to lean into it. So the later on in the Darkblade, so you can see here, Darkblade 4 is where he stops being stepfather to young children, and here in 5 is where he becomes stepfather to young adults. And
Yeah.
I started writing books 5 and beyond when my own stepkids were leaving home, getting jobs, boyfriends, and the question in my head at the time was, what role do I serve in their lives? I'm not, they have no need biologically to depend on me. They don't need me financially because they're making their own money. So who am I to them? And so I basically took them out individually and asked them that, and had really cool conversations with them, kind of getting their take on our relationship over the years, and then now that they were adults. And then knowing all of this, knowing that this was the story that I was trying to tell, it's shaped Darkblade ever since. So the reason that it's going to be 15 books in the end is that they're the character's evolution as, father, stepfather, young adults in his life. It's kind of a mirror to my own, but knowing that is what's led me to really lean into it. And it
Yeah.
makes it feel so much more real when I get to say, oh yeah, my daughter does exactly the same thing. Or for example, in Darkblade 5, the character's sort of girlfriend slash not quite wife, she's like, go talk to people, go be friendly, go be outgoing. And that's like a direct, quote from my life where my wife is like, go do the things, go be out there. And so just being able to put those pieces of myself out into the world and people being able to see me in this way, in let's call it even a safe, because no one's going to be like, you wrote this character who feels like awkward and like an outsider, so you're definitely awkward. Now no one's gonna put those pieces together until we have a conversation about it, and they'll be like, oh, that's so interesting, I didn't know you felt that way. Or and so it's a way to connect with the real me.
Yeah.
So knowing that, it like that ability to be vulnerable, I think, in a way that I never really could in real life, that's the most enriching part, I think, of being a writer.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Yeah, because I think about, like, I love, like, deep thinking and critical thinking and kind of imagination, and mine's a little bit different. I've never written a book. I joke, like, I don't think I'm very creative. Mine's more like I think of sports, or I think of different things and, like, my appreciation, and I can explain it really well, like, why I like it, and give someone a picture that I'm thinking, and you do the same thing with your books. You have a way of thinking and creating and getting lost in your thoughts and what you're wanting to put out there, and then you can explain it really well for people to enjoy, which is just cool. I'm learning more and more when I talk to authors like yourself. It's almost like my brain's starting to think a little bit more like you, and I'm just like, I can see it, and I just love the passion behind it too, and like see your enjoyment in the way you talk about writing and in your ideas. I just think it's just so cool to me.
The beauty of writing is that it's a it's a sandbox, and the sort of the way that in computer programming, a sandbox is a virtual space that whatever program or virus or thing you're coding can't get out, right? So it's this emotional intellectual sandbox where you're like, I want to process this difficult thing, or I want to explore this difficult thing, or I want to talk about this difficult thing. It's entirely air gapped, isolated from the world, so you get to deal with it right there in the moment, or something comes up and you weren't expecting it and you deal with it right there, and then you decide, I want to put this piece of myself out there, or I want to delete it and go somewhere else. But it's this incredibly safe space to be the most vulnerable and human side of yourself. And I've found that the more that I do that in this, let's call it a safe space, the
Yeah.
easier it is for me to do it in a less safe space, which is, with the people in my life. So writing has, or, writing and reading makes you a more empathetic person, because you have to put yourself in the character's mindset, but also all the people around them, to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then it's made me understand, I feel this way, but a lot of people also feel this way. So an example of this is at Worldcon last year in Seattle. Worldcon, great big convention. Everybody shows up. Maybe 1 in 50 people there. But I had been very aware, I have been for many years, that I always feel like an outsider at these conventions. So I was like, no, I'm going to make sure that anybody who I can talk to, I will. And I noticed that there were a lot of people kind of hanging out on the peripheries of this group that I was in. So it was just like, oh, come and join us, come and talk with us. And I found myself being more of an outgoing person than I normally would be, because I realized, oh, I feel like an outsider, but so do all these other people. So if I can include them, then nobody's an outsider anymore. And we're all in this sort of shared space of enjoyment. And it definitely changed the tone of the convention entirely, because I basically spent the entire convention drifting from friend group to friend group.
Yeah.
I knew some of the authors who had booths. I knew some of the authors who were walking around. I knew some of the panelists. I knew some of the Instagrammers. I knew a little bit of everybody, so I could always just kind of go walk for a few minutes, see a friendly face, talk to people, feel like an insider, and then if I needed to move on, I could. It creates this whole feeling of everybody here is really interconnected, and it changed my convention experience forever.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. As a, I mean, you've been a published author now for a little over a decade. Has has your process for writing, has that changed at all over the last 10 years? And I'm thinking more just like the way we read books, Kindle, AI, just do you still just sit down and type pen and paper? Do you utilize certain tools? Like, how has writing changed for you from year to year, if at all?
I think it's a really slow evolution. Like I've got like if I cracked open the Queen of Thieves books, which is one of the oldest series that I've written, and I read the writing, and then I compare it with a page of what I'm writing now, Darkblade 11,
Okay.
there's a lot of similarities, but you could almost say that they're two different authors. And it's because every single book that I read, every single book that I wrote, it was just kind of this evolution. The same way that the characters evolve in the story,
Mhm.
I evolved in my writing style. Maybe I'm more comedic here, maybe I'm more aggressive here, or and it's all about who I am as a human being, what I consume, whether it's TV shows or books or
Mm,
movies. So I think every author's style in terms of the actual writing is always evolving basically day to day, because if I sat down to write the chapter that I wrote today tomorrow, I'd be in a totally different headspace. So
okay.
it would be a totally different chapter. I mean, it would be the same beginning, maybe the same ending, maybe the same middle, who knows, but it wouldn't be the same chapter because the act of creativity is this singular experience that cannot be replicated the same any ever again. Like I will never go back and write a chapter the same way. Even if I accidentally lost the chapter and I had to go back and try to recreate it, I couldn't come out with it the same. But that's fine because it would be a totally different experience. But what matters is that it's true to me and it's true to the character
Yeah.
and the story that I've created. And if you do that, then it doesn't really matter. And so I think I've gotten a lot more, let's say, understanding of just the need for inspiration and creativity, because I have an outline that I follow, but
Yeah.
then I'll tweak that outline every day, every other day, once a week, or the story that I thought I was telling changes and goes in a different direction, and then I end up telling a totally different story, but because it's what I'm feeling when I sit down to write it or what it's evolved into, it is the truest story, the truest form of that story. So even if it's different than where I started outlining it, that's okay. And that's something that I say I've been evolving into the past 2 or 3 years. Before I was very much like, here's the outline, don't deviate from it, follow through, you get to the ending. Whereas now it's like, okay, here's the outline, here's where I think it should go, what feels right now, what feels right in the moment, and just kind of paying that out until I get where the story ends naturally.
Yeah. Dude, I'm glad I asked that question because I'd never thought of that before, especially like when you have a 15 book series you're working on,
Oh yeah.
your life over that time and your experiences, what's going on in the world. So many things can change that changes the way you're thinking about a situation or a character. And I've honestly, to me, I was just like, oh, you just have a plan, you stick to it. But I didn't think about every day you're different, your thoughts, because I do the same thing. I think I'm going to write something
Yeah.
down and I forget it and I write something else down. I mean, a book's completely different. There's so much more to it. And so I just never even, it sounds so simple the way you phrased it. Like, duh, like every day's different, it could be
Well, it's
different
it's
here and here.
it's easy to say in hindsight, and this is where a long series like Darkblade kind of gives you the benefit of hindsight, because the first Darkblade Assassin, I wrote the original version in 2014, right? And then I have relaunched it a couple of times. The current incarnation was written in 2021. Who I was in 2021 is a totally different person than who I am now. And you can
Yeah.
see the kind of evolution of the character book by book. It's not easy to see, but then you look back at who they are from book 1 to book 11. Like some of the stuff I'm writing right now where the character is just totally emotionally vulnerable. There was no way in book 1 that would be believable. But
Yeah.
then by book 8, 9, 10, 11, he's gone through all of these things to where now he can be emotionally vulnerable. Now he can say these kind of things. And that's a direct imitation of my life where I made friends or I made connections. And so I was able to open up to people. I'm able to be myself with them more where I wasn't able to before. And all of a sudden who I am as a human being, which in many ways is the blueprint for who the hunter is as a character, because it's kind of pulling on my feelings of outsiderness, which have changed, my feelings of I don't know what I'm doing, which I've sort of shifted my perspective on. There's so much about me that's changed. And so being able to reflect that in the character's journey. So an example of this in book 11, a chapter that I wrote, I think last week. The character nearly dies. He nearly dies in every book, so that's not a spoiler at all. But he nearly dies. He is certain he's going to die, and then he doesn't. And he wakes up and he's like, my perspective on this whole, like my approach to living, I need to change it, or it has been changed by the fact that I didn't say what I think I needed to say, or I wasn't vulnerable enough with people. I didn't tell them how I felt. And it's not, it's not a declaration of love to the girlfriend. It's with the children. And then all of a sudden he gets swept up in this party. Now, 4 months ago, he would have been like, get me the fuck out of this party, because he is not a party person. He's always been on the sidelines. But a few months ago, I decided, you know what? I'm going to just be a more of an outgoing person. I'm going to enjoy these moments. So I spent New Year's Eve in Miami Beach doing the last thing that I wanted to do, which was partying. And I had such a good time. And
Yeah.
so coming off the literally, this was 20 days ago that there was this whole that like evidence of what is effectively a giant life shift for me, because I've always been the introvert, the wallflower, and now I was, in the middle of the party and having a great time. So when I'm sitting down to write this chapter, the hunter gets swept up in this party and he's like, you know what? I'm going to have the best time of my life. And he does. And that's exactly what happened to me 20 days ago.
Yeah.
But that chapter would never have been written 3 months ago. So just
Yeah.
kind of watching these evolutions, some of them are big, some of them are small, like this emotional journey that he's going on and that I'm going on, and we're kind of on the same path together. That's, I think, what keeps me coming back to this story and keeps me chasing some other story, because there's always some new path to growth, some new path to evolution, to finding more insights into who you are or understanding yourself better. And that's the most rewarding thing about being an author, I think.
Yeah. No, that's great. Now you're gonna have me thinking, like, when I read a book series now from start to finish, I'm gonna, like, think about the process and probably look a little deeper at the author and see just maybe if there's certain things or news, like, from year to year that I can kind of, like, attribute to the story just as, like, an outside thing as I'm reading. I just
Yeah.
think that again, I never thought of that, but it makes so much sense. Um, do you read nonfiction books too? Or do you I mean, is mainly fiction?
I have a hard time with nonfiction beyond research. If I'm researching something, I'll read nonfiction, no problem,
Yeah,
because it's applicable.
yeah,
But let's say I spend so much time thinking about things
yeah,
that I want something that is almost like a break, right? And that's where fiction is
yeah,
sort of my
always.
escape, but it's also filling up the creative tank, right? So many of my best ideas or the most poignant moments come from something that I read. So as an example of this, in Darkblade 7 and 8, these two here, I wrote both of those books because I wanted to set up a single moment where in David Gemmel's legend, Druss goes the night before battle and has a cup of wine with the guy who is going to face him on the other side the next day. One of them is going to die. They both know this, but they sit down as honored enemies and have a moment of just peace. I loved that. It was such a moment of goodness and decency and nobility, and I was like, I want that. So I wrote those two books just to set up that one moment where the hunter's like, yeah, I'm going to go kill that general, and he doesn't. He goes and sits down and they have a talk, and it was just such a delightful moment. And I can't get that necessarily in nonfiction. You
Yeah.
get, the riders of Rohan coming over the hill to charge down to Helm's Deep. I'm sorry, what nonfiction book can give you that moment?
No, for sure, for sure. And, again, I just find it interesting. I'm always interested, like, with what people are reading, which is gonna lead to my last question for you, but I've definitely gone heavier on fiction more recently. I used to be, like, 100% nonfiction. Now I'm
Mhm.
I'm really 50-50 for the same reason you said, just a brain break, just creativity and just my imagination. I've learned to appreciate that a lot more with just, I don't know, just the day-to-day stuff that you gotta deal with and think
Mhm.
about already, real
Yeah.
life. It's so enjoyable to read a story and kinda get lost in that for a little bit, so I totally get that. But this does lead to my last question, Andy, for you. I mean, this is awesome. What besides your own, because 'cause they're awesome, and I've been recommended your series twice now, which is great, not just from Sebastian.
Hell
There was
yeah.
another author, I'll have to send you his name. He actually brought your name up and, like, he was quickly rattling off authors that he liked, and your
Oh,
name
that's
came up.
amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to send you who it was, but when people ask you for good authors or good book recommendations, who are some of your favorites, and who do you like to recommend?
So there's two answers to that question. There's the authors that made me the author that I am, and then there's the books that I'm really enjoying these days. So the authors who I directly blame for my becoming an author are Brent Weeks with the Night Angel series. Like The Hunter was inspired by the Durzo Blint character. He was so badass, I wanted more. There were no more books in the series. Fine, I'm writing my own. Like that's directly there. Pierce Brown taught me you can make readers suffer emotionally and they will love you for it. And so that is what I do in every single one of my books. Brandon Sanderson showed me kind of the path to creating epic stories with very real and human characters. Scott Lynch showed me just how twisted fantasy can get, and really playing on the darker side is just a delight. And Salvatore with the Drizzt Do'Urden and Artemis Entreri, the struggle between humanity and brutality, it's just my favorite part of writing Darkblade. So those five are the ones who I can directly say, and I have actually said it to 4 out of 5 of them. I got to say it to Brent Weeks at Dragonsteel last month. I got to say, you are one of the 5 authors that I blame for becoming an author. He got a kick out of that.
Yeah,
The only one who I haven't gotten to say that to is Salvatore.
yeah,
But then if there's authors that they ask me right now who I'm really enjoying, I mean, John Gwynn is definitely kicking it right now. He's one of the great modern fantasy writers, at least for me. His
yeah,
blend between action and epic and character and world building, spectacular.
yeah.
Jay Kristoff, nobody has destroyed me quite as well as Empire of the Vampire, that whole series. Amazing. Sebastian is another one that I always recommend. Like you can't see it. So I've got his Spellslinger series. This is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
last
yeah.
4 books in Spellslinger. And then I've got Traitor's Blade, the Great Coats at the other end. I have almost every single book he's written. Basically, anytime he puts out a book, I'm like, I'm gonna need a signed copy,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
goes
yeah.
on the shelf. But
Go ahead and send that
I
to me.
I have absolutely loved everything he's written. Peter V. Brett, Peter McLean, Richard Swan. I mean, there's so many
So
amazing
good.
authors, and it all depends on how dark you like it. Because if you like dark fantasy, that's typically where I tend to play as a reader and a writer. I do have some occasional cozy recommendations. It's not my usual cup of tea, though.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, I've got a lot to add to my list, and like I said, I mean, Andy, this has been awesome. One of my favorite conversations. I love seeing your passion for it. I've got since Sebastian got us introduced, I've got one of your books, the first Dark Blade, on the Books4Guys website. I'm in the
Nice.
process of getting them all posted on there so they can all be spotlighted for people to find them, and so I'm excited to get them all on there. Again, it's such an honor that Sebastian would get us introduced, and I can see why now he wanted us to, because this has been fantastic, and certainly would love to do this again at some point because I know you're
Absolutely.
gonna write so many more books.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say this. For any guys who are looking for fantasy books that have just a sense of it's okay to be a decent human being, which is actually surprisingly rare in this day and age.
Yeah,
Sebastian's works are by far some of the best that I've read. Like this is one of the things that I have admired about him as a writer and as a person. It's why we're friends. Is that he is sort of forever in the pursuit through his storytelling of basically saying it's okay to be better,
yeah,
and I mean that as not be better, in whatever you're doing, but who we are. Like it's okay to kind of have that sort of Gamelian old school nobility, or even the old school nobility that you get in a lot of like the old fantasy series. So
yeah,
so if you are looking for books that will just show you how to be a better human being, I mean Greatcoat, Spellslinger, even Malevolent Seven, all of his stuff is
yep,
just it's just great for that.
yep.
And mine
1107 was
shows
how
mine
I got
shows you how to
introduced
kill
to it.
people more creatively.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah, Malevolent 7 was how I got introduced to Sebastian. So that's yeah, I got that one up too. But no, Andy, man, this has been so awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time to come on here. Like I said, can't wait to get all of your work spotlighted, to start reading all your books, and hopefully I can catch up to where you're writing your next one. And I can get a
Thank
little
you so
bit
much for
closer
having
to
me.
that. Yeah. But thanks a lot, Andy. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.